It's not a plug and play. It's a change initiative. We have to keep human in the loop, and we have to keep measuring the process to see how that augmentation is paying off. I try to position it as augmentation and not replacement. Very important as we think about AI to think about, what is the measurement in terms of accuracy. And in that use case, we started with 80% accuracy, and it got better over time. But we still had to keep human in the loop, because imagine you just submit an RFP and it had the wrong pieces. It's just not a good sort of experience.
Today's guest is Ozge Kurtoglu, a global leader in commercial excellence and digital transformation. She's the founder of Ascend Business Advisors and the former VP of Sales Excellence at Honeywell. Ozge has spent over 25 years helping Fortune 500 companies drive growth through AI, pricing innovation, and go-to-market strategy. Her work has delivered over $227 million in margin improvements across industries like healthcare, automotive, and tech. She has degrees from Harvard and Wharton and boardroom experience shaped by Harvard Business School's Women on Boards program. Ozge brings a sharp, systems-level perspective to enterprise transformation. Whether she's advising CEOs or launching AI-enabled workflows, she's at the forefront of how businesses are reinventing growth. And if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, we hope you enjoy it. If you've been here before, I want you to know in advance, this is one of my top 5 favorite interviews when it comes to how you can transform your business with AI and processes. Thank you, Ozge, for being today with us.
It's my pleasure to be your guest.
At any rate, it is a pleasure to meet you, and we are super excited to chat with you today. Jacob and I, we have really been enamored with artificial intelligence and technology over the last couple of years as we've delved into it, and we decided that we were going to just get as many people as we could and talk to them about AI and what they're doing with it and how they're using it to impact their own work.
So my background with AI goes back more than a decade. So yeah. Awesome. So fresh out of Wharton Business School, I was hired at Microsoft. We didn't call it AI then. But one of the first jobs I had at Microsoft was to sort of think about the bidding mechanism behind Bing search advertising, and think about, how can we actually sort out keywords that advertisers would bid on into industry verticals, and so that we could do intelligence to understand what is the supply and demand profile by type of keyword and therefore by type of advertiser. So I do have and I've used it many, in my career in pricing many times, in terms of leveraging and understanding price elasticity of demand, or trying to group like customers together so that we could treat them as one group, one distinct group from a pricing standpoint based on their observed behavior. So again, at the time we weren't calling it AI, but it was AI. So
that's right. One of the things that we have learned as we've talked to people like you and in this podcast is that what we call AI has been around for a while. It's this generative AI, and the ease of use is what's kind of new. But I think it's really interesting that you say, I've been doing this for a while. We're finding that with a lot of the people we talk to. What has your thoughts been as people kind of take it as a new thing, but you're like, this is old hat, guys? So how does that change your approach when people talk about this as a new thing, and then you come in? I see that you're doing some consulting work, and then, like you said, you've got a decade of experience doing this at Honeywell and other places. So, kind of, what's your reaction when people say this is new?
So, again, I try not to sort of. This is a friendly audience, so I'm just giving you my sort of background. But especially with clients, what I try to sort of talk about is, in my world, I sort of think about sales, I think about marketing, and I think about revenue operations. So in that world, obviously pricing is part of that. I try to position AI as more of an augmentation and not automation, because obviously, if you think about it, the impact of AI is quite profound. If we think about sales productivity and everything we can do without necessarily alienating customers or sales teams. And as you know, there's a lot of like reactions to change. If we sort of position it as a wholesale change of your life or of your job, it tends to be very scary. So what I try to do is to emphasize that it's a key in terms of augmentation and not automation and not replacement of salespeople. So, and in reality, AI, and I've done this specifically at Honeywell, AI can really surface insights, like buying signals or price sensitivity. It can also help augment sales reps' efforts in terms of, being smarter and earlier in terms of summarizing conversations, being like pre-populating Salesforce instance with all of the notes from a phone call. If obviously sales rep needs to let the customer know that AI is listening, but if that's the case, it's not about replacing human empathy or relationship building, and it's reducing admin time and helping, giving sales teams more time for actual selling as opposed to filling fields. I try to position it as a win-win for everybody. Right now, like, for example, there are stats out there specifically from the likes of McKinsey or Salesforce saying that 30% of the time of a sales rep is actually selling. The rest of it goes to admin. So if we can sort of shift that time away from admin into selling, that's a great use case for using AI.
And that was one of the things that we found really fascinating, is that, using AI, and I'm glad to hear that there's more of this real world case, using AI to get rid of some of that admin stuff so that you can focus on building those relationships and creating that level of trust, and removing some of that admin work of, like you said, filling in forms or fields and such when you're on a call, and you can just let the AI capture that data as it's being spoken. And I think that is fascinating.
That said, there's also a lot of misnomers and mistakes that companies do when implementing AI, right? In their go-to-market strategy. To your point, I think one of the big mistakes that I see, there's a couple I see. Number one is treating AI as end-all, be-all. I'm going to plug it in and it's going to fix all my problems. No, that's not going to happen. There's going to be a lot of change management around this initiative. You need to hold people's hands. You need to think about how to implement the tool, and even before implementing the tool, fixing the data. Because if you're like implementing AI on top of faulty or biased data, you can accelerate things, but you can go to hell more quickly, right? Or you can make mistakes more quickly. So that's not a good thing.
It accelerates your direction. Oh, well, I was going to say, we're proponents also of keeping humans in the loop, right? Like, that's one of the big phrases we've heard. And you mentioned this already in the go-to-market strategy, getting salespeople to augment their sales with AI, not replace them. And so, here on your LinkedIn page, you talk about how you led global sales, $36 billion with AI-powered sales optimization. So what I was going to ask is, what do you make of when people think about replacing people with AI? And do you think you get more power when you approach it from a, how do I make my people more powerful with AI? And you kind of started going down that road. So how do you make people more powerful with AI?
So again, going back to the first sort of topic, I try to position it as augmentation and not replacement. Can you replace? Honestly, AI has been replacing certain types of jobs for the last 15 years. I will tell you, one of the first examples, dynamic pricing, right? So we used to have large pricing teams. And imagine, like, the first time we started buying tickets online, right? That's all dynamic pricing. So, back in the days, we would have actually, and this was one of my first paid jobs when I was studying at Harvard, I was actually selling tickets in an agency, in a travel agency. So I would go behind a computer and you would book the flight, right? And then you would hand them the ticket. And all of that, part of that has been replaced with buying tickets online. And what's behind that is all of the pricing algorithms. That said, I think that there's a lot of use cases where you can generate ROI, real ROI, measured real ROI with the augmentation as opposed to ripping people out and replacing their roles. Like for instance, like when we cluster customers and we were able to measure price elasticity and win-loss history, we were able to in a systematic way raise price without losing volume, anywhere from 3 to 5%. That can translate into 100 to 200 basis points of margin lift. That's pure profit. So, and without necessarily cutting headcount. So that's from the pricing side. Again, to your point, another way to sort of keep people in the loop but enable the process. So if you think about it, across many industries, there is government purchasing. Or let's say, I mean, it doesn't have to be government, but you can have RFP process, requests for proposal. So you have sometimes those requests for proposals might ask for very repetitive information. Where do you manufacture? Do you have these such and such certificates, and so on and so forth? And parts of the proposal will be common across certain types of customers just because of the way that they're purchasing and the information that's needed. So it's very possible to automate if you're able to sort of put paragraphs together and tag them by customer type. It is possible to automate the first place of putting the first like RFP response together, but you still need human eyes, right, to read through it, making sure that we have all of the right pieces together. Another sort of step that we were able to enable was table of compliance, meaning, does this RFP have we responded to everything that the customer is asking for, and therefore the RFP will be accepted as opposed to rejected. So imagine if the RFP gets rejected, then it comes back to you have to rework on it and modify it and submit back. So, I mean, using AI by just pulling it together, we were able to shorten the process on average by 2 weeks. And 2 weeks means a lot in terms of competition, in terms of getting in front of the customer earlier and not having any mistakes. So from that standpoint, again, very important as we think about AI to think about what is the measurement in terms of accuracy? And in that use case, we started with 80% accuracy and it got better over time. But we still had to keep human in the loop because imagine you just submit an RFP and it had the wrong pieces. It's just not a good sort of experience. So that said, again, depending on how we implement, and this is the same for all different change management initiatives, there's like a study from BCG that only 1 in 5 companies saw measurable ROI from AI projects. And that's why I think we need to take it one step at a time. It's not a plug and play. It's a change initiative. We have to keep human in the loop and we have to keep measuring the process to see how that augmentation is paying off.
That's fascinating. One of the things that, you've already talked about it. You've applied this to pricing, to sales, but you also mentioned now applying it to operations. And so, and obviously there are lots of applications of AI across the board. What do you see are perhaps the quick wins, right? And maybe the answer there isn't any because, we have to think about it. A lot of people think they can plug and play. And you mentioned that, and that's not true. When we talk to people in their first experience with AI as well, I did a prompt and it didn't work, so I'm moving on, is kind of a very shallow investigation or exploration of what AI can do. But we have seen that. So what do you think are the quick wins, though, that can help people see the value of AI, either kind of what you've been talking about has been happening now for more than a decade or this new generative AI stuff?
So, I mean, specifically for Gen AI, there's a lot of use cases that can be used by marketing, right? In terms of generating the first pass of the content, maybe even looking at campaign personalization and like having mass personalization for all the customers, and having that next generation of account-based marketing, like hyper personalization at scale. But then again, I would say there's a statistic here, like Salesforce says that 71% of marketers using Gen AI, they're seeing fast way to personalize campaigns, and in a very effective way. That said, again, going back to our first warning, we need to have unified data. We need to have clean data. We need to test our data, and we need to have a very clear use case. Because if we just try to just be implementing AI without a specific use case, which means you have to have some kind of a process mapping, right? I mean, this is our existing process. We do this first, that second, and third. Oh, by the way, we're going to plug in AI right here. By the way, these are the KPIs we're going to measure before and after. And then these are the KPIs we're going to measure to make sure that AI is doing the right thing or the accuracy is there. So I think, if many companies, again, still have to this day, a lot of siloed CRM, siloed pricing, and siloed marketing. So I think, if anything, what AI is going to force us to do is to unify these very, very siloed, work streams. I mean, again, Salesforce they've been in the business of really customizing instances of Salesforce implementation to the point where you have so many different fields for a sales rep to fill. But then again, we have to rethink every time we ask a salesperson to fill a particular, field. It's time. What are they actually doing with that field? And can we automate? And then, of course, as we think about, having shared visibility and trust in the data, then we can use AI on the front side of marketing, lead gen, and on like when it comes to sales, and eventually as it goes through that whole quote to cash process, and it gets priced by the pricing team and eventually get fulfilled. I've seen a lot of use cases, really interesting use cases that are really mundane, like nothing out of the ordinary, but acceleration of the process and or minimizing the error rates in the process. So if we can do that with AI, that's, I think, very achievable and very possible across many different processes.
There was this week, I started seeing some ChatGPT's agent videos, operating, and there was an interesting discussion about some of it and you talk about error, making sure that the errors are removed, and one of the stats that was in this video was we have a 98% accuracy rate on ChatGPT making the spreadsheet correct, and then there was a discussion about what is the human error rate versus what the AI's error rate. And so that's a really interesting topic. Can you speak a little bit more on that?
Definitely. I mean, again, at the end of the day, AI is going to force us, as we talked about this before, to put down our processes, right? So if you're able to put down your process and start measuring, then you can figure out what was the human error rate, right? So, because if you don't have a defined process, you cannot measure and track. And here I see even mid-sized companies with very limited budgets being able to dip into using AI. It doesn't have to be just the play for Fortune 500 or very large companies. So there's a lot of use cases where you can bring much needed improvement to key bottlenecks, like qualifying leads, generating quotes, rep onboarding. I mean, that's a great use case for Gen AI. And these tools don't necessarily break the back in terms of having to require huge IT investments. Companies more and more like Salesforce, to your point, like HubSpot, they have embedded AI agents, like Gong for sales intelligence. And it's more about trying, but in a way where you measure and then see if it's working. There's also a stat out there, SMBs that use or at least try AI in their commercial process, they tend to grow 2x faster than peers that don't experiment with AI. So this is coming from McKinsey SMB Pulse from 2023. So it's about defining your process. It's about understanding what are the bottlenecks that are perhaps causing humans to make those errors, right? And being able to bring much needed improvement.
Do you think that 2x kind of growth or increase comes from, because you've talked a lot about to implement AI successfully, you have to have done a lot of legwork, prep work, mapped out your system, cleaned up your data. So do you think that 2x growth comes because businesses implementing AI are the kind that have written processes and clean data, or do you think it comes from the use of AI?
Oh, definitely. It's not just from AI. It's about having that improved discipline around process and also cleaning data. So there are also AI-based tools that help you clean data faster.
I was going to ask that next, actually.
Like Augment. Yeah. So, which is also very important. At the end of the day, data is the lifeblood of everything.
Could you address then, like, if I'm a business and I want to implement AI more fully, because that's kind of, as people start to listen more and more to the podcast, we're seeing business owners and people who want to implement AI. So what are the steps that a business would take to be AI ready, if we were to look at it like that?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Again, it starts with defining your data sets, having data governance, and it's just like we talked about, cleaning your data, getting it ready. Then looking at your process to understand where the bottlenecks lie. Again, depending on your size, if you're a small and medium-sized company, maybe you take one of the tried and true tools that are already developed by HubSpot, by Salesforce, or by another AI company and implement them. Or if you're a large company, you might even have your own AI tools. And again, for example, at Honeywell, we had our own set of AI tools that they were internally developed. So it depends on the type of company. But very importantly, making sure that we define the process, we set the KPIs, we start measuring before and after to understand what is the AI doing. And then also we need to define what types of risks we want to be able to undertake, right? Because AI is able to make risks, especially mistakes, especially Gen AI. So I think we need to figure out what is that profile look like? What kind of risks are not tolerated by the company? Again, the risk profile of a pharmaceutical company is vastly different than that of a 3PL or versus a manufacturing company. So I think it will be very dependent on what sector we're in, what kind of regulatory environment we're in. But at the end of the day, we also need to think about the ethics. So whatever it is that we're developing and implementing, we need to sort of filter out if there are any ethical risks and how we're going to overcome them. I would really advise everyone to not take for granted that all the AI tools that are developed out there, they've been developed and they will always result in sort of processes or outcomes that are ethical. So I think every company needs to have their own view into what is allowed, what is coherent with the brand, and what is also legal, right? Because we don't want to cross any legal borders there. And then eventually, implement it. Try to do a couple of use cases, just in the spirit of trying fast and failing if we're going to fail, and then as we see improvements, sort of scaling it up to the rest of the process or the rest of the regions.
No, that's good advice in making those decisions are going to be vital for any company going forward. I mean, especially the ethical concerns. And Jacob and I have talked a little bit with people on, what the early discussions of IP and who owns what and copyright and all these other things. And I appreciate you bringing that ethical concern back to the discussion, because it's vital that we maintain, again, what Jacob and I talk about, human in the loop, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to be humans that are impacted, not the AI. The AIs don't care. Truth be told, I mean, they don't. They're just these tools, at present. And, we've got to worry about how it's going to impact the people that are employed, the people that we're selling to, the people that we're marketing to, and the people that we're resonating with. So
beyond the legal kind of copyright, IP ownership, ethical issues, what do you think are the biggest ethical issues that companies face as they implement AI or think about their use of AI?
So again, data privacy and consent, right? Do we have the rights to use the customer data in the AI models? Are we being transparent about the fact that we're using their data, and risk of using any scraped, like web scraping, or versus proprietary data without explicit permission? That's in a risk category in itself. Bias and discrimination. Again, AI models will unintentionally amplify gender, racial, socioeconomic biases in the form of lead scoring, targeting, and personalization. So, like if we have biased sales patterns, it's going to continue to reinforce those patterns. Like if you're on purpose excluding an age category, that could lead to, for instance, age-based discrimination, which could be illegal in certain countries or in certain states. So definitely something to watch out for. Transparency and explainability. At the end of the day, sales is a very personal and very human-centric process. Sales teams, they have to deal with customers. And they have to explain to customers how the company came to the decisions that they came to, right? So if AI just makes it so opaque that the decision cannot be explained to a customer, how can we expect that customer to accept that decision? So I think it would undermine trust and make accountability difficult. I've seen this time and again in CPQ implementations, configure price quote implementations. The first generation of AI, especially when they started using like neural models or random forests, decision trees, those types of models, we would hand off to the pricing teams just a recommendation. Okay, the recommendation is $2.50. But the AI couldn't tell, like, why? Why is it $2.50? And then you're like at a position where the pricing team is facing the sales team, and they're not able to say, hey, for this customer it's $2.50, but for the other customer is $1.60. Why? And if you are in that position, you really can't arm your sales team to be able to have a productive discussion with the customers. There's also the other angle around misinformation and deep fakes. I'm sure you will all have seen this. I mean, I've seen this like really funny video of they've taken these champions, like Olympic jumping, swim jumping, like champions, and then they've implemented it with dogs. It was quite entertaining, and for a minute I thought it was real. It's the newer generation is much better at that. I have an 11 and a 13-year-old. They detect it just like this, but the rest of us might not really understand that it's so. But then again, using synthetic voices, avatars for outreach, and it might be seeming creepy as well. Like your company, like if you start using those synthetic voices, you might be crossing ethical lines, or it might even damage your the perception of your brand. And finally, there's always concerns about job displacement, AI getting and taking people's jobs. Sometimes, again, I've seen, we started using AI in sales coaching. So if AI is leading the sales leader to, let's say, less ethical ways of selling, like pressure selling or making unreal claims, then is it the salesperson or is it the AI sales coach? It's there's also the questionable domain there.
That's one of the early applications that I've seen in my law firm is we use it for a variety of coaching. Kind of there were studies early on that showed that generative AI was really good at getting customer service people up to speed, and so that's been a very helpful way. But we are big proponents of keeping humans employed or understanding how using AI can, what you say, augment your job. Warren, you were going to say something?
More on the funny side of things. You were talking about the dogs in the diving competition, and one of my favorites that I've seen of late is as the Bigfoot blogs, where he's out there and just the influencer Bigfoot doing all sorts of woodsy stuff. It's really fascinating that people are doing those fun things.
Totally. And it's also a very that big gray zone. Like, for instance, like you can go into Perplexity or Claude and write in, I don't know, fox in a hot tub, right? It's going to come in and it's going to make a picture of a fox in a hot tub. So, but it is rearranging already existing pictures, right? At the end of the day. So it's, I mean, there's a lawyer among us, right? I mean, I'm not the expert here, but like, who are we? Who has the IP rights? Are we giving credit? Credit where it's due when that happens? Is a big question on my mind.
Yeah, not to hijack the conversation, but for me, as I think about it, the current direction of things is the Copyright Office is saying that individual creators don't have copyright to the content that they create with an AI tool. And then it looks like the big tools are going to get away with not paying licenses in many instances. And I think it should be reversed. I think that's the wrong social contract. I think that the AI companies should be paying for a license for these other things. And I think small creators should be getting copyright to the things they make with AI. But it looks like we're headed in the wrong direction on both of those, at least as far as I'm concerned. But that is a big ethical thing, and people are talking about it and debating it. We might have to do an episode on just that again, Warren. It's been a while.
Yeah,
some decisions have come out to update that. Go ahead, Ozge.
So when I'm talking with my customers, so if I think about the context of sales and marketing, the advice that I give when I'm asked this question is governance, right? Governance is essential. We need to have clear AI usage policies. What tool should be used by whom and with what type of oversight. Human in the loop is key. AI should augment and not replace. And then ethical human judgment, it should be at the core of what's targeted and how we personalize. Disclosures are key as well. They build trust. Always disclosing that this type of content is AI generated, or very important to sort of clarify the hurdle in the regulated sectors. And then finally, training teams that AI can be biased. There could be ethical concerns. At the end of the day, if they notice anything that is on the borderline, they need to be the first ones to raise the flag so that we can address those ethics-related concerns. It should be part of any sales or marketing training, in my point of view, from this point onward, to say, if you see such and such behavior coming from AI, you got to raise the flag.
What about, so you've mentioned this bias in the data set, bias in the AI. So there are concerns when it comes to the ethics of it, HR decisions, or frankly, decision making in general. There should be a check when you use an AI, right? It should be like, hold on, let's think about this. Or does it depend on the magnitude of the decision as to whether or not we're going to have a human review it? Kind of, what are your thoughts?
Definitely. I think, at the end of the day, depending on the size of the company, I have seen more of having a console to look at what are our AI policies. Like, for example, think about like a governance console for AI and having maybe one branch for sales and marketing together. Because you don't just use it in sales and marketing, right? There's a lot of use cases in supply chain. There's a lot of use cases in logistics and so on. So, I mean, I wouldn't be a good candidate to sit on the use case for logistics because that's not my preview. So, but I think having the right people and also having representation from, in certain cases, HR, in certain cases, our legal counsel will be critical. And the role of that counsel should be making the policies. But then we need to think about what kind of systems do we have in place so that we can know that the system is not working, or what kind of early alarms do we have in place. So thinking about that should also be the council's responsibility. At the end of the day, it's the entire company's responsibility. Anybody who's employed there, right? Like, I wouldn't want to be associated with a company who's discriminating against, let's say, a specific age group or a specific group of people. So if I work in that company, it's my responsibility to also ask the right questions on how we are governing AI.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's one of the key factors that I caution people when I'm talking to them about AI is like, you are the expert in your field. AI is not. So when you use it, you need to vet that content or vet that process or what it's generated and make sure that, it falls within the lines that you personally commit to, or you're saying your company has committed to, whatever their rules and regulations are. So yeah, that is a huge factor, is making sure that they adhere to whatever those stipulations are within the company and within their own value system. I mean, I think a big concern is, don't let the AI determine your value system. You need to make sure that you're using your value system on it, not the other way around.
Definitely. And it's going to get even more complicated. Now we have agentic AI, right? Like, we can define AI agents to do a specific, task, and then start taking decisions by themselves. So that's when, to your point, like defining what are the parameters of those decisions. And in the future, they're talking about even like AI of one company, the AI agents of one company, like completely going out and purchasing, right? Interacting with the purchasing agent, AI agent of the other company without human interaction. So in that scenario, what if AI purchases a whole bunch of, let's say you're manufacturing a widget, you need, I don't know, a red dye. What if AI, buys the purple dye instead of the red dye, right? I mean, what are the, like, in that sort of scenario, like, being able to define those parameters is going to be even more critical, because the more AI starts acting on our behalf, I think the larger are the parameters for bad decisions or the impact of having a suboptimal decision.
Thanks for all that you've shared so far. I want to ask you to dive into kind of a niche topic. So as we kind of reviewed and stalked you online, as we do with all of our guests, so one of your things is how you've ramped up sales, augmented sales, particularly at Honeywell. So I was kind of wondering if you'd be willing to walk us through, like, let's say you have a sales organization today and you've got all of these AI tools. What would you do to kind of achieve the success that you have achieved in the past with these kinds of AI tools? Like, I assume you'd start with mapping out your process, cleaning up your data, but what else would you do? Like, how would that work?
So, first of all, again, depending on the company and the size, I think it will be important to our earlier discussion, think about, having a governance structure, because we're going to deploy a number of solutions using AI in the whole sales and marketing process. Once we have that, I think definitely there's a number of use cases in lead scoring and prioritization. So, thinking about AI analyzing historical win data, thinking about buying signals, firmographics, behavioral patterns, scoring, and that score changing in real time in a dynamic way. Again, here, you're saving rep time, you're increasing the win rate and you're reducing the sales cycle by being able to improve your hit rate. There is also the next step in terms of what is the next best action we want the sales team to do or the sales account team to do overall. Gen AI can come in and suggest what to say next, when to follow up, how to tailor the message based on where we are in the deals cycle or deal stage, based on the persona, based on the competitor data. This is already existing in like Salesforce's Einstein, Microsoft's Copilot, and Outreach, Kaya for contextual sort of suggestions. Here, the value is being able to go faster in scale in a way that is very personal to that sales process, to that customer, even with less experienced reps. Then there is real-time conversation intelligence. And this is where I think we need to be super careful, right? I mean, again, AI can analyze sales calls. This is already in existence from Chorus, from Zoom IQ, from Gong. And then they can flag missed objections and talk time ratios or deal risks. And then they can also surface tried and true better performance scripts to the rep in real time to help them coach in real time. And of course, you can use very similar approaches when onboarding sales reps and to improve their win rates, to improve also shorten the onboarding time. Then there's this whole sort of area around proposal and email generation. So with the proposal generation, again, if it's a government RFP, we talked about the table of compliance, being able to automate that process. Of course, any proposal will have some kind of pricing in there. But pricing, I mean, again, it was one of the first functions to go through that AI transformation. If they're not using a CPQ tool, I would highly advocate for it. There are CPQ tools that are already existing in Salesforce ecosystem, or there's various software companies, PriceFX, Pros, you name it, Synchron, that can enable better pricing, leveraging a software and AI approach. So then again, even in proposal generation and email generation, very key to have that human review to make sure that the tone is appropriate, that everything is accurate. To your point, AI might make mistakes, and everything is compliant to the ethics of the company and to the ways of working in that industry and in that company. Here again, we're shortening the time. It's a productivity enabler. In the case of pricing, it would also be potentially a profit enabler or a share enabler, because if you're pricing better, you can get more profits. And then there's a number of use cases on forecasting and pipeline health. So meaning AI can flag those deals that are like at the risk of slippage, or identify parts of the pipeline where we're seeing sandbagging. Meaning, you've always seen this, right? Sales teams taking deals in the very last week of the quarter, putting them into the next quarter, or like putting them so far. Yeah, right. I've seen that a lot. Or keeping it to themselves and not putting it into the, into the tool.
Not creating an opportunity until, yeah.
Exactly. And risk patterns that are like invisible, or basically comparing to averages for the like customers to say, hey, a deal like this should have been there, but it's not. And, why is it? So I think here the benefit is more predictable revenue and then better forecasting, which is always in the interest of the company. Yeah. That this way you can arrange your production better, right? Mm-hmm. You can, if it's a public company, it's a very bad thing to miss your forecasts. You get punished by the
markets come at you, yeah.
By the market, yeah. So that's not a good thing. So less surprises at the end of the quarter. And then sales content and enablement, meaning you have a lot of AI platforms, HighSpot, Seismic, that can recommend what content works with what kind of sales persona industry or deal stage. Also cross-functionally used with marketing too, because at the end of the day, marketing enables some of that, not all of that content, but some of that content. Here, I think overall, just to sort of finish my comments, that's like the whole cycle of the deal. Those are the types of use cases that I've seen companies take on. That said, again, there's no one sort of plug and play AI. These are all different use cases, and they need to be implemented depending on the company, depending on their internal resourcing and their appetite for change. I wouldn't advocate doing all of it all at once, because again, at the end of the day, we need to think about the sales teams and the marketing teams that are consuming this change and they're adapting to this change. But having a frequent rollout of the different use cases will be helpful. But another watch out is, as you put AI into a process and accelerate that process, we need to think about the next step in the process. My favorite example is we started enabling the table of compliance, accelerating the sales process. But then you got to make sure that the pricing team is enabled to start, feeding that process, right? Because accelerating one part of the process at the expense of creating a bottleneck in the next step is not a good thing. So, which is why very critical to look at the process end to end and making sure that we're, not creating future bottlenecks by improving one part.
Yeah, you mentioned silos previously and breaking down some of those walls between various different aspects of work. So yeah, you've given me a lot to think about. I'm over here thinking about transcripts that I have from sales calls and going, I need to look at that and see where these objections lay that I missed and some other things. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think that this is probably one of my top 5 favorite interviews we've done on the podcast. Honestly, Ozge, really, the depth and breadth of business knowledge and how to apply AI to it is really stellar. So that's, I mean it. That was an incredible explanation. I think it touched on really, and you've also throughout the interview talked about how to get your organization to do it the right way as well. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. I really do appreciate it. Top notch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent explanation.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, being in this podcast. I think, you have done a number of these interviews and you're very knowledgeable in terms of how to make it easy on your interviewee.
We appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Well, we love having people visit with us and learning from them, and you have taught us a lot. All right, AI Explorers, thank you so much for visiting with us today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and subscribe, and we look forward to speaking with you and with future guests in the next podcast.